Welcome to Applied Intelligence, a conversation at the intersection of people, technology, and getting stuff done. And now, here's your host, Imteaz Ahmed.
All right, I'm going to bring up our guest. His name is Imteaz, and I'm going to introduce him right now. Come on up, Imteaz. Welcome. So Imteaz is the head of performance marketing for the infant nutrition business unit at Reckitt. He's a data-driven leader known for delivering scalable solutions, seizing high-growth opportunities, and leading multidisciplinary teams on a global scale. His expertise lies in developing industry-leading practices, managing end-to-end content, social and commerce experiences for the omnichannel shopper, and driving business performance through digital strategies. Welcome, Imteaz.
Thank you for having me, Daryl, and it's a pleasure to be here in Vegas for Shoptalk.
It's good to have you. I was telling the group earlier, having breakfast with you this morning made me infinitely smarter. It's really cool to see a leader who is actually at the front edge in his organization driving change. Like you're not just part of the wave, you are the wave. And so I want to get underneath that today and sort of how you think about not only the work that you're doing, but how you're transforming the organization and driving results. So let's talk about the organization first. How would you rate the data maturity of the organization in general? How's Reckitt thinking about data?
So Reckitt's split up into three business units. One business unit, the one that I work in, which is nutrition, I would say is very mature when it comes to data strategy. The other two business units, I would say, is pretty much on par with the rest of CPG. The reason why nutrition is kind of ahead is because the way we've marketed our brands has been through CRM. So we've been capturing first-party data for over 20 years. We've been sampling to our customers for over 20 years. And that data and information kind of sits in our platform. So it's been at the heart of what we do for a long time, and it has forced the organization to take this stuff really seriously.
It's incredible. And you were saying, like, as a category, like the formula category in general, like you have more intelligence on consumers than potentially any other category, right? Like you've done a lot of external surveying and really learning about that consumer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure thing. So the interesting thing about the formula category is that in the US, there's 10,000 babies being born every day, and then there's 10,000 babies leaving the category every day. There's only about 1 or 2% birth rate growth in the US, and breastfeeding is on the rise. So from a volume point of view, there's not a lot of volume to extract. So from a category growth point of view, there are three things that you can basically do. One, win market share against competitors. Two, get families to buy more formula and feed for longer within the lifetime value of the baby. And thirdly is trade people up into more expensive or more premium brands within the portfolio. So given that these are the drivers of what we have within our category, this is how you'd have to kind of think about how do we execute media in order to grow, and then how do you leverage the data that we have as a brand and what we've been building over time, and then activate with our retail media partners.
Incredible. And the capability of it, obviously the capability of capturing data predates you. Like this is something the organization, would you say the maturity has accelerated quite a bit in the last couple of years? Like how would you think about that, sort of the use of data, the maturity of the organization in terms of its application?
Sure thing. I think as more and more data services have come online, as more enrichment opportunities of our data sets have come online, I think the business has been stepping in to, understand how we can use this stuff more. The really interesting thing is, specifically with retail media networks, is that end-to-end closed-loop attribution. So when Amazon launched the ability to upload audiences directly into Amazon, for us, it was kind of like a no-brainer, right? Like we've been capturing all of this data. Amazon had Amazon Marketing Cloud launched, and we're like, well, if we're capturing the date of birth of baby or the expected date of birth of baby, so if we were to create cohorts based on that date of birth, we know exactly where they are in that lifetime value. And we have a whole suite of products from prenatal vitamins to routine formula onto toddler. So if we can create those weekly cohorts, then we can show the right ad at the right time to the right consumer. So leveraging all of this stuff has become part and parcel of what we do now. And it's very exciting to activate that specifically through Amazon. And we're very keen to do it with other retail media networks as well.
And maybe without pointing out specifically what other RMNs are not up to that level, what are the capabilities that maybe that you're hoping that they speed up so that you can really optimize?
Sure thing. So in terms of use cases of data clean rooms right now, what I typically see in the industry is everyone's using it for what has happened in the past. How has my media performed historically? Very few people are using data clean rooms to activate media real time using the data that they actually have. So the very cool thing that Amazon has is the ability to activate that directly through the DSP in real time, or as close to real time as possible. We don't see that capability elsewhere. Other retailers have, let's call it, more basic execution capabilities against the media set, but the velocity in which Amazon is giving us data to actually activate is insane. So I think the activation piece is key here. Otherwise, you're just looking at what happened, and you're looking at very generic data dashboards, which aren't necessarily adding a lot of value if you're not changing the way that you're actually doing activation.
I think there's probably two lessons highlighted there. Really, those were really good examples. I think in terms of capability of the organization, also very interesting. So on the brand side, like the idea that you have to have the capability to act on that data that Amazon is giving you. You have to build that in the organization. And of course, as a retail media network, to be able to give that transparency and to build the systems underneath that can get that in front of advertisers is compelling.
Sure. And I guess the framework to kind of think about how to activate data clean rooms is in two parts. One is thinking about audiences, right? So for me, using retail media, and everyone's talking about the word incrementality at the moment, but for me, the truest incremental shopper to a brand is effectively the following framework. You take people that are searching for your competitor keywords and or category keywords. You minus everyone who's bought that category previously in the last 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, and you do DSP media against them. That is the most incremental audience that we could ever find of people that are, or shoppers that are completely bottom funnel. So that capability and that granularity that we now have is absolutely amazing, and that's something I've never had access to before as a marketer.
Amazing. One of the things that I was excited about this morning was, and what I learned is that the window for you to activate this customer is very, very short compared to like customers only are a category a certain amount of times in their lives. Can you talk about sort of why that's important and maybe give a sense of the timing that you need to hit there?
Sure thing. So, when you're coming into the baby formula category, most parents aren't expecting to formula feed, right? It's one of those things is needed when you need it, right? Then what happens is 1 in 3 babies switch formulas because of a digestive issue, right? But then after that switch, as soon as a baby is kind of comfortable within a formula, parents just stick.
Mm-hmm.
So, or the baby just sticks to that formula, you don't want to change anymore. So we only have like 90 days from birth, effectively, or 90 days from first purchase of formula to really influence who is actually going to purchase which of our brands. And if you don't nail those 90 days, you've lost them. The other part of this, which is really interesting from an efficiency point of view, is there comes a time when a family is no longer interested in understanding about formula because the baby is loyal to that formula and they're not going to switch anymore. And for us, it's wasted media spend if we keep advertising to these people. So because we know date of birth of baby, at one point in time in that lifetime, we have to stop marketing to them and or switch them to the toddler range that we have. And then after that, if we don't have any other portfolio, we need to stop marketing to them and think about who else can we acquire using the savings that we've generated from not wasting our money anymore. So this lifetime value thinking that I learned whilst I was doing direct-to-consumer marketing is now enabled through a data clean room.
It's pretty impressive because as a category, there's probably not many examples that you need to be that targeted. That most categories, the customer's in maybe twice a year or 3 times a year. If it's a food category, they're in it weekly. So I was really impressed to hear about how efficient you need to be to and how targeted you need to be to land in that time. And are there other retail signals or other areas that you look at to kind of get those signals? Where else do you go to find them?
Yeah, so for us, things like looking at if a consumer has purchased a particular SKU or product portfolio multiple times, we should be putting, subscribe and save ads to them, opting them into subscribe and save and getting them locked into our formula. If a consumer is not purchasing a category anymore, they should be exited from the category. For us now, the way that we're thinking about data clean rooms is the challenge is finding the category insight. You find that category insight or you find that customer problem, you go to the data scientist, you elaborate what your problem is and what you're trying to solve for. The data scientist then looks at what are the available data points that you have within the tables within the data clean room to answer that problem. You design a test and then you go from there. So all of that insight, all of that understanding that we had from shopper marketing, the dunnhumby days, etc., now is really clearly defining what problems you want to solve, and then using the available data to actually solve those problems.
Interesting. What are your KPIs?
So, as a performance marketer, it is total sales versus total cost of those sales, so media cost. So for us, another interesting thing about data clean rooms is the availability of seeing the full customer picture and the full sales picture. What do I mean by that? Typically, when you're doing a DSP campaign, you might have 1 or 2 SKUs attached to that campaign, right? You're only advertising 2 or 3 SKUs when you're doing that campaign setup. What is very cool is that because we can see the entire customer journey and the entire basket of products that the consumers are buying, we are actually optimizing for total sales. So not just the 2 SKUs that are in the campaign, but the total sales. So a brand might have 20, 30, 40, 50 SKUs. So I don't really mind which SKU the consumer buys as long as they're buying my brand. So the ad campaigns are set up to optimize for that total portfolio sales rather than just those 2 SKUs. This is fundamentally different to the way we've activated features before, because that data visibility of seeing the entire customer picture within the platform was just not there.
So let's maybe shift a little bit back to how did you get to a place where you were able to drive significant results for the organization? We can't share those results, but you've been driving results for the organization through your team. So can you talk a little bit about the construct of the team, how you put it together, how you think about sort of that framework that I talked about earlier. How does it come together, not only for your organization, but then how do you tie into the RMNs, to clean rooms? And
okay, I'm going to share some failures because I love going to conferences and hearing about failures because I think that's where the value happens. I initially, maybe 2 or maybe 3 years ago, I started hiring data scientists for my own team, and I even went to Harvard and did a data science course, learned about data science, etc., thinking I was going to solve the world's problems through data science. And then both of my data science, I hired one, the guy left in 4 weeks. The second one left in 8 weeks, so it was an improvement. But then I realized that as a CPG organization, internal data scientists who aren't led by experts within the field aren't going to work. So I had to bring a data agency partner on board to kind of help us to do that. And they're Sigmoid. They're a fantastic company to work with. But for us, partnering with the retail media networks is really getting them to share what they can do and leaning in from a partnership point of view. And this is kudos to Amazon for releasing all of the documentation around Amazon Marketing Cloud, letting us process that and understand how we can use that using our data science agency, and then creating pilots and setups to just get going, right? We can clearly define what we're looking for. And obviously you need to have a very base level understanding of how these things work, but you need to leave it to the executional experts to actually do the real work of data science. It's very hard for a CPG. I'm not, as technical as I sound, I'm not that technical. You really need to leave the hardcore heavy lifting to the people who know how to do this.
And how did you get what kind of influence, what kind of work did you have to do to get the sort of buy-in from leadership to get that in, what it took to get that moving?
Sure. We had one thing going for us at the time. So our competitor 2 years ago, unfortunately, had gone through a recall. So we were selling a lot of product even without doing media. So my team, it's not that we didn't have much to do. We just had a bit more time to look at other projects. So from a leadership point of view, we kind of explained the model of what we wanted to do and what we wanted to achieve. And leadership was like, okay, cool. This sounds like the right thing to do. We have data. Amazon has more data. we should connect it and connect the pipes and see what happens. So from that way, Reckitt really does lean into testing new things and trying new things. Obviously, we had to go through the internal compliance process of doing all of this stuff and explaining it to all the lawyers. But yeah, you need to have an attitude of leaning in, and it's amazing when you have a retail partner that also leans in and helps you out as well.
Nice. One maybe last question around compliance, privacy, risk. How's data clean rooms and the capability to manage those clean rooms helped you in that regard in terms of your efforts?
Yeah, so having a very deep understanding of how this stuff works, and then ensuring that you bring in the right expertise on board to take you through how can we be the most stringent with our data, and how can we explain all of this stuff and demonstrate that we have the right documentation for doing all of this stuff, and that we've taken every available measure that is out there, plus some more, to ensure compliance to what the regulations are currently, right? So having the right expertise is very critical in this space.
Partnering with the right teams internally, I'm sure, is part of that. And
educating them as well, right? Like ultimately,
because there's a new frontier for them too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And ultimately, my job has become dumbing down this stuff so that everyone understands it and then doesn't freak out that it's all AI and it's all going to take all the jobs away, etc. It's more about, making people understand what the objective is and how we plan to get there.
Nice. Are you ready to answer some questions?
Let's go.
All right. So we'll wait. I think there might be some folks coming up here with some mics. We'll wait for them for a sec. Anybody have any questions? There's one up front here.
So you mentioned how one data scientist left after 4 weeks and the other one left after 8. What exactly happened, and would you recommend hiring a data scientist, or would you recommend going with something like Sigma?
I would, and it comes back to the volume of work that does that person actually have, and how do they navigate the organization, right? When you go with an agency partner, they're very clear on what the work is and what the jobs to be done are, and they go out and execute it. My problem was I didn't know how to explain half the things that this guy needed to do, and then convince all the internal stakeholders to give him the right permissioning to do all of this stuff. Whereas the data science partner that we had worked with on this particular project, they had already done all of this stuff previously with Reckitt. So they were already compliant. They already had some expertise and the right relationships as well.
What role do you think generative AI is going to have on data clean rooms in the future?
Very cool. For us, we're using generative AI to tag tens of thousands of our creative assets. So think about all of the DSP ad creative that we have, so all of the image work that we have. Generative AI is going through the entire repository of ad creative that we have, and it's tagging them. So by brand, by color palette, by marketing campaign, by product, by sizing, by placement, all of that stuff is getting tagged by generative AI. Then because we've connected all of this stuff directly into our DSP, we're seeing ad performance or the sales and ROAS against ad creative or marketing claim or product type, for whichever period that we're seeing. So that's part one. Part two is taking those insights. You then think about, okay, these are the types of creatives that work. These are the color palettes that work. These are the claims that are working for us. How do we templatize this framework and then let generative AI help us create more iterations of that content and then publish it? Now, there's a bottleneck here, which is having the right approval process, because we still have a very human-involved process when it comes to approving our content before it goes live. That we haven't solved for yet. But I think the production challenge of creating thousands and millions of iterations of content is not an issue anymore. It's about just getting to the right place. The third iteration of this is going to be enabling the machine to do all of this stuff in real time. So bespoke or personalized creative at a micro audience level in real time, and then letting the AI basically decide which marketing campaign or which marketing claim is too risky to self-publish. So we're not there yet, but this is where it's headed.
My question has about clean rooms from an activation perspective. So you mentioned Amazon's DSP because you're doing a clean room with Amazon. What about companies that don't sell on Amazon or that are looking at clean rooms with partners, not with retailers? Do you have any experience with, does your clean room have to also be a DSP to be able to activate against it, like a LiveRent or something like that? Or are there options for getting benefit out of clean rooms that you might do with a partner, and then how would you activate against it?
So if you're not selling on Amazon, you can still use the Amazon DSP to do ads. Where clean rooms or the Amazon marketing cloud kind of comes into hand here is for whatever goal you want to optimize against, you can optimize against that. So if it's clicks, if it's view through, whatever the KPI is that you want to optimize against, you can still do that. It just comes back to very clearly defining what is that audience, what are the audience traits within the Amazon ad ecosystem that you can actually find within Amazon Marketing.
How are you keeping pace with all the changes that Amazon is making to its APIs, all the new things that it's launching? How are you doing that?
You read Amazon's amazing documentation, and Amazon is very good at releasing that stuff, so you just got to keep on top of it, and then have the appropriate teams as well there on top of that.
I think we're out of time, but thank you so much, Imteaz, and thank you, audience, for joining us today. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Eth.